Hello lovely people, how are you all doing today? I hope you are well. I am snug as a bug in a rug, indoors, away from the weather. A few books for you today, but we're going back in time. So this goes back to the very first time I talked about books on my channel. Obviously I've been reading forever, but it was the first time I talked about books on the channel. We're going back 4 years, and my goodness, I rattle through them very, very quickly. So I thought I'd share these with you today anyway, because they may give you some ideas and think, oh, okay. But in terms of really sort of a deep dive into each of the books, it is not. It's not deep analysis of each book I'm rattling through. So think of this more like a sort of a book tapas. A little bit of all sorts. You can have a quick little taste of all sorts and then decide, that's the tastiest. I'm going to dive into that one. So yeah, let's whiz back in time 4 years for our first little bundle of books on the sofa. I can't remember, I think there's about 4 in this bit. Enjoy. Anyway, yes, I was mentioning in the shed, do you remember that by the cover? The Good Life. And I was briefly mentioning how the book before this informs how I read this book. So I thought I'd give you an example of it by showing you this run of 4 books that I've read back to back. These are all finished, I'm on to other books now. But I was given this book when, I think it was about May, this is from Sarah, I think, yes, from Sarah. Braiding Sweet Grass. I'll give you the subtitle as well, because with all of them that gives a clue. Indigenous Wisdom, Scientific Knowledge and the Teaching of Plants. This book has been an absolute beauty. So I read it back in, I've turned page corners down, that's so naughty. Don't dog-ear your books. That's obviously because I didn't have a pencil at the time to mark something. I usually keep a pencil with me when I'm reading so that I can make notes if I want to. Anyway, I read it back in sort of May, June time, and then I picked it up again this autumn because it's an incredibly rich book. There's so much in there. It's one of those books that can definitely be read 2 or 3 times at least all through. Plus, there are parts of it which I'm sure I could just read over and over again, little sort of paragraphs here and there. It's beautiful. Written by the woman herself is a Native American, and it's all about her relationship with plants, both as a botanist, as a scientist, and as a native person who has been brought up with teachings about the plants, the whole sort of creation myth. It's really beautiful and interesting because it's got that kind of dual aspect of the science head and the spiritual head. So I completely loved it, reread it, fantastic. Then I went on to read, do you remember me mentioning this one, Indian Creek Chronicles. This was sent to me by Michelle. Now the thing that caught my attention, on the cover it said, honest, lyrical and full of a kind of ineffable wonder. Anyone who has ever loved a place truly will surely love this book. So I thought, right up my street. Okay, so first of all, thank you so much, Michelle. I'm really grateful and I'm really glad I did read it. But actually, I think having read it off the back of Braiding Sweet Grass, it jarred with me in so many places because it's about this young man, I think he's sort of 18, 19, 20, sort of first year at college, wanting to drop out, wanting to do something, sees this job advertised to go and mind a fishery, I think it's in Idaho, is it in Idaho? It's over the winter, he'll be cut off from everybody. It's real, you know, out in the middle of nowhere. The whole thing, there was just this real undercurrent of machismo about it. What I didn't like was, in the winter part of it, he goes on a lion hunt. I found it despicable, actually. Now, I'm not naive and I don't wear rose-tinted spectacles. You know, I am a practical person. I don't romantically think of, oh, wouldn't it be amazing to live in the wilderness? I know it's hard. I know it's really bloody hard. And that people who live in these climates have to eat meat, because it's simply not possible to grow enough vegetables or even to keep and store the vegetables. I don't know, maybe someone will correct me. And I accept that. And it you know, it comes up in braiding sweetgrass too. The difference is, when braiding sweetgrass, Robin was talking about it, it's talking about that appreciation of the animal and appreciating the animal being there in order for us to take it, using every part of the animal, respecting the animal up to its point of death, respecting its treatment even after death. This was just about going out and shooting things for the fun of it, and I couldn't bear it. And in terms of loving a place, there were moments in the writing which I thought, I feel like he's finally connected with that place. But for the most part, I just didn't feel like he connected with the place. It didn't feel like he gave two hoots about it, to be honest. He sort of crashed in there, did it, wallop, out again. So, like I say, I'm grateful to have been given the book, grateful to have had the chance to read it, but it stuck in my throat. Didn't like it. So following on from that, I then started to read this one, The Good Life, I was mentioning. This is very typical of my sort of reading, in that if I'm reading something about outdoor living, then I'll go to my shelves, I'll see, oh, what haven't I read? And I'll follow that theme over a few books. I'll get bored of that and then I'll go on to read something else, totally different. But this one was about the British couple who went, and they end up going and living in Dawson City, right up in Yukon territory. And it couldn't have been a bigger contrast to this one. They were so... I felt their bond with the place in reading it. It was so beautiful. Terrifying at times, my goodness, you know, every day is a life and death situation. But I really, really felt that they deeply fell in love with that place. So much so they've stayed. They've got a kid now. They're all growing up happily there. They really struggled with killing anything for eating. So I think it was a caribou they had to kill. And they struggled with it so much, and this is what I mean about respect. They actually went and spoke to, I can't remember the name of the tribe, I'm so sorry, but the First Nations tribe from that area, they went and spoke to one of the elders and said, you know, how do we reconcile ourselves to killing? You know, one of the reasons we've come here, we want a simpler life, we want a life that's more in touch with our environment, we want that closeness with the environment. How can we go out there and kill something? So I like the fact that firstly they respected the place enough, and secondly they respected the knowledge and the wisdom of the First Nations people there. And by the end they were saying that they'll never ever get rid of the feeling of guilt of taking an animal's life. And by the way, I'm not meaning this as a big vegetarian broadcast, I'm not at all. Like I said, I do respect that folk in these areas have to eat meat to survive. I don't have an issue with that. I don't have an issue with someone respecting an animal and, well, I don't want to go off on one. Anyway, so I loved that, and it brought me back to that whole place of that connection with the land, of loving it, of respecting it, of just being there. It was beautiful. And then, and this was then a bit of a jump, I read Ray Mears, what's this one called? Goes Walkabout. So I think this is based on a series that was on the BBC. I didn't see it. I don't really see a huge amount of TV, full stop. But for anyone outside of the UK, Ray Mears is a bit of a bushcraft expert. He's a bit of a go into the wilderness and survive with nothing but a fire starting kit. He's a bit of a hero of mine. So this is him in Australia, and he goes to different areas in terms of in the far north, the sort of the rainforest, and then obviously into the centre of Australia in desert. There's quite a bit of history at the beginning about, and I say it in inverted commas, the discovery of Australia, and he puts it in inverted commas too. I really like that because it shows how much he respects that actually this may be the first time white man or woman, white man, has seen Australia, but we didn't discover it. We certainly didn't discover it. It's always been there, and it's been inhabited for a long, long time. So what's lovely in this is, as he's going to these different areas and looking at, you know, what's edible, where do we find water, etc., etc., he's always doing it with the Aboriginal people of that area. So he's drawing down their knowledge and their skills. And a lot of it, it's really beautifully written as well, because a lot of times places are so sacred for those people. They allow Ray to look, so for instance at some rock paintings, for example, but he doesn't write about it in the book. All he says is, yes, I went, I saw, but it was a massive deal for them to share something so secret and sacred with him that he's not going to tell us any more about it. But again, there's a theme running through all of this, as you can see. It's about respecting people, you know, about respecting those first peoples, those first tribes, whatever, respecting them. They are the ones who have been guardians of the environment, of the animals. They have been guardians for millennia. And it's only us stupid, white, arrogant, 19th plus century people who've gone in and started wrecking it all. So that was a really good little clump of reading. Thoroughly enjoyed that. Yeah, told you, rattled through them. Even more, and even more rattling now. This is a whole big bunch of books to come. And I think part of the reason I wanted to share this with you back then and again now is it sort of demonstrates the way my mind works in terms of what shall I read next, how there's a bit of a thematic flow to what I read. But this little section that's coming up now, again, you can tell that it's been the Christmas period because there's a chunk of fiction in there which, yeah, I don't normally read, but then over Christmas it's like, yeah, let's have a little bit of fiction, let's lighten things up a bit. So buckle in, because I've made a list here. There's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. I think there's about 6 books in the next few minutes. Whew. Don't blink, you'll miss them. Like I said, a ton of novels. So the first one was, I'm going to have to work out where the light is best. There we go. Ali Smith's Winter. So it was given to my sister. My sister read the first page, did not get on with it. My jury is out. It's odd. It's very odd. It's odd in an intriguing way. Her use of language and punctuation, she really plays around with it. So, excuse me, if you're used to a very easy read, bit of chick lit or whatever, and it's a page turner, I think you would struggle with it because, like I said, there is a lot of play. It's on language and the use of punctuation, for example. It's not a book where one gets to the end and thinks, it's not a case of all the loose ends being tied up. It's not that it's left on a cliffhanger. I suppose what I'm trying to say is it's almost a non-story. It's just, it feels like writing of moments. So, not the easiest read, not the most satisfying read when you get to the end of it, but intriguing and quite a good brain exercise. So if you've been doing a bit of lazy reading, pick up some Ali Smith. Her previous book is called Autumn. Just out now is her new book called Spring. I was in one of my local secondhand bookshops recently and they had a copy of Spring. I looked at it for about 2 seconds and decided not, which kind of says everything. It's partly because it's a novel. I used to read novels all the time. I mean, if we go back through all the classics, yes, been there, done that. Life's too short for reading novels these days. I was also given, it's very unusual for me, P.D. James' The Mistletoe Murders. So it's unusual for me in 3 respects. 1, it's short stories. Don't normally do short stories. 2, it's fiction. And 3, it's crime fiction. But you know what? I loved it. So each story, there's 4 stories in it. They're about 40, 50 pages long, so it's perfect for one story at bedtime. And it reminded me a little bit of the Tales of the Unexpected by Roald Dahl, which I raced through as a teenager, because I won't give anything away by saying it, but each ending to each story, literally, because it's the short story form, you have to do things quickly. Pretty much the last line of each story was a moment of, oh, I didn't see that coming. So that was quite fun. Then I went on to Tracy Chevalier. She's the woman who wrote Girl with a Pearl Earring. This one's called Remarkable Creatures. And this is the story of, well, it's a fictionalised account of Mary Anning, who lived, let's say her dates when she was really active was say 1800 to 1830-ish in Lyme Regis in Dorset, and she is responsible, one might say, for the beginning of our understanding of fossils, our discovery of fossils, our classification of fossils. Her ichthyosaurus, for example, I believe it was the first ichthyosaurus ever found. So I find it really interesting from the point of view of fossils, natural history, also what it says about women's place in society then. Yeah, it's a fun read, but I'd rather, it's the kind of book that I read this and now I want to read a non-fiction. There was one sentence in it right at the beginning, I turned the page, that was so hideous, I nearly threw the book across the room. It's talking about, there's a family, it's written from the point of view, well, it's written from 2 women's point of view. There's Mary Anning, the poor woman, and then there's the classy lady from London. The London family moved to Lyme Regis, and they're talking about the fact that there's not many people around to socialise with. And the sentence goes, in a town with many fewer families whom we could socialise with. It should be, in a town with many fewer families with whom we could socialise. Such horrible, clunky English. Anyway, that's on page 24. I persevered. It's okay. It's, you know, it's like if you were having a numb-brain day and you just want to read something, it's not challenging. Great. And then this was a present from Clarice. This is so funny because this is not anything I would normally read. One Christmas in Paris. So it's a bit of a chick lit love story set in Paris, and it's hilarious because it's full of cliches, both in terms of a love story and writing about Paris. But thank you, Clarice. It was a fun read. I pretty much read it in a night. And this is what I was meaning about my books leading on to other things. Oh, giddy up, Vivi. We've got a couple of things to get through today. So, so that was pretty much all my novels done. I want to get back into my other kind of reading. So I'm taking myself there with Edmund White, A Boy's Life. Do you know that one? The Flaneur. So I've only ever read A Boy's Life by Edmund White. Gosh, I mean, he's written lots. But we're back to literary writing now. And flaneur, it's an expression that just means, it means to wander with no purpose. And it's lovely. The subtitle of the book is A Stroll Through the Paradoxes of Paris. Lovely. So now you can see why I've read this after my romantic novel. What's lovely is he's talking about so much of Paris that I know and love. He's talking about a lot of the writers, the philosophers, the artists, the cultural life of Paris that I've read, experienced, what have you. Gorgeous. That one's nearly finished. And then finally that will take me on to, I've had this on my shelf for ages. You see that? From Here You Can't See Paris. And it says, it's a fascinating memoir about life in Les Arcs, population 159, a hilltop village in a remote corner of France, untouched by the modern era. Fab. So you can see how my mind is working now, can't you? Did all my novels. Last novel was a romance set in Paris. I've come back to non-fiction and literature in terms of the Edmund White, The Streets of Paris. Now I'm going to take myself off to a remote corner of Paris, of France. And in doing so, I'm going to take my mind into slightly more remote places and come back to reading some natural history, probably. So, oh my giddy goodness, I think I need a gulp of water after all that. I really enjoyed looking back on these. I hope you did too. One of the reasons I enjoyed looking back partly was because it's like, wow, I've forgotten I'd read that, or gosh, I read a lot that week, or whatever. But it was that P.D. James Mistletoe Murders. And I didn't mention it in the video, did I? No. My sister had given it to me, and that was the first time she divulged to me this guilty pleasure that she keeps for Christmas of buying herself a crime fiction, a classic, so from the 20s maybe up through into the 50s, buying one of those crime classics to tuck herself up with, away from everybody else and the rest of the world, and just indulge. And that P.D. James Mistletoe Murders, she'd had the Christmas before and had passed it on to me. And then that has started my own now little tradition of having my Christmas crime read. Just saying that, hang on a tick, because have we seen a video of it yet? Or I don't know what order these videos are going to come out in. But so, for example, for me, I've already had my Christmas murder. It was sent to me by C, but I've also got this one, Murder in the Falling Snow. It's by all sorts of different authors. Can't wait to tuck into that during the winter. Yay! So yeah, it was a delight to see, for me, it was a delight to see those again. And for you, I hope it's been interesting, perked your interest in some things, whetted your appetite for maybe a different a type of book you might not have previously thought about reading. We can broaden all our horizons, can't we? I mean, I do with fiction. Fiction, I think, no, I'm not going to read that. Someone gives me a fiction, I read it and I think, yeah, I enjoyed that. Good stuff. All right, lovelies, until the next one, look after yourselves and enjoy your reading, whatever reading you're up to. For now, though, cheerio. I was about to say night-night. I was about to say night-night, sleep tight. It's because of my association with books being the last thing I do at night. So I was going to say night-night. Maybe that's the case today. Night-night, sleep tight. Don't let the bugs bite. Cheerio.